and team. We're launching a new show today, and it's going to be a twice-a-week show where we're calling it Behind the Screen. If you don't know me, if you've never kind of followed any of our things before, let me just kind of give a brief introduction of the show and who I am and kind of what we're hoping to do with this. So this show is called Behind the Screen. It's going to be a sort of a variety show. I'm just going to get on twice a week, 10 o'clock Central on the Iconic Production channel, and we're going to talk about a variety of things. We'll take questions from the patrons in the chat. I will do some game reviews of role-playing games that I really love. As you can tell from the image on the background, I have a lot of role-playing games. I have a lot of thoughts and theories on them. I have written a role-playing game, Jackals. It is a Bronze Age fantasy RPG that is available from Osprey Games. And I'll talk a lot about that. I plan on doing some game development, showing off kind of my process, what I use, that sort of thing. I develop for 13th Age. If I can get permission from them, I may do some development on here, or at least talk about kind of how to build monsters, kind of my thoughts on things that I'm working on for my 13th Age campaign, possibly for published books as well. And yeah, in general, it will be just kind of the goal of this show will be to kind of encourage you to go out and do more gaming. If you've got questions about your campaign, if you've got questions about game design, if you have questions about different RPGs and what they may be good for, or wanting to try a specific genre of game and don't know what kind of systems or RPGs are available, I would love to kind of help guide and encourage you to be gaming. This all started with a conversation I had with a good friend of mine named Ben. I was wanting to do something a little bit more regular on the Twitch channel, and he was like, "Well, you should do something that encourages people because you're really, upbeat about games. You love talking about games. You should, you're always there to answer questions. Just do it now on Twitch." And that's going to kind of be our goal and our attempt to do this. Hey, Rook, good to see you. Rook, one of our good friends of the show and of the channel, and just personally, you are winning the sub count. Look at that. That's spectacular. I don't even know that I have that level of sub with my own channel. So, oh, Rook, thanks, man. That's amazing. So yeah, we're just going to be talking about games. I love games. Again, working on 13th Age, working on a couple other projects. Let me see if I can pull. This is the game that I wrote, Jackals. It's Bronze Age fantasy. It's a D100 game. We'll probably do a whole show just kind of talking about it. But I'm glad Rook is here because the first game we're going to review on Thursday is I'm going to walk through a review of Torchbearer 2nd Edition, which I love. I have always been a big fan of Burning Wheel, have a Burning Wheel tattoo on my arm. That's kind of how much I enjoy that game. And this is sort of Burning Wheel HQ's love letter to old school D&D, but sort of a way of taking all of the implicit setting designs and things that they said were going to be important but maybe didn't have mechanics around them and make them part of the system. Plus, it's one of the most beautiful RPGs I own. So Rook, thank you for suggesting this. I will be doing a review, kind of a look at that on Thursday. So yeah, we're going to do this twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, starting at 10 Central, kind of going as long as it takes me to drink a cup of coffee. So it's not a heavy investment show. Hey JD, good to see you as well. So yeah, that's kind of going to be the format and the outlook of the show. If you have questions, feel free to post them in chat. I'm always willing to talk about games on the shelf, games that I'm running, games that I'm writing, more importantly, games that you're running and writing. And if you have questions and would love feedback, I would love to participate in that. So a little about me. Again, author, game developer, game designer. Got into gaming a very long time ago. Wow, JD, that is a great question. I am currently writing games that I can talk about that I'm writing in. I'm doing 2 games for Osprey. Jackals has a new book that's coming out in August, I believe, Travelers on the War Road, which is just going to be an in-depth look at the 4 cultures of the War Road. And then I do a lot of development, and then it has some secondary writing in 13th Age. I'm currently working on the new Behemoths book. It's almost through development, which I'm very excited about. For 13th Age, just wrapped up Drakkenhall, had a great lineup of authors on that book, and it's going to be available soon for pre-order from Pelgrane. It's made its way through editing as well. And I have a new Clash game coming out from Osprey that I'm working on. Don't know how much about that I can talk about, but in broad terms, it's going to take the Clash system and kind of replicate some of the let's call them Street Fighter-esque movies of the late 70s and early 80s. And then I've got 2 other games that I'm working on right now for Ulysses, but those are ones that I can't really talk about at this point. And I do owe Rook the Philosopher class from the Melconi in Jackals. And do not worry, Rook, I have 4 writes left to finish up on the Children of Silver, the Hulathi supplement that I'm writing, and then I go back to doing my redesign on the Philosopher, and I will send it to you so that you can tell me what you think of it. So yeah, I've been gaming since middle school, which is more years back than I care to admit. And unlike there's a lot of people out there talking about games, and a lot of people love the D20 games, F20 games. So 13th Age, which of course I love, a lot of D&D podcasts, a lot of D&D talking heads out there. And if you take a look at the shelf behind me, I tend to love D100 games a lot more than I like D20 games. I read a lot of role-playing games. I enjoy dissecting a lot of role-playing games. You can see a little bit of Pathfinder 2 over there, some Warhammers, Zweihander, Ruin Masters, a bunch of Glorantha and RuneQuest on this side, Mage, Call of Cthulhu. So I have a breadth of experience with running games and different systems that I think could just provide an interesting way to look at games. We're also going to be looking at how I plot games, how I plot writing, that sort of thing. So I have kind of set up. Uh, there we go. So I forgot to add the mic to my second scene. Sorry about that. As JD said, we are working on it. So this is Scapple. It is a mind map software that I love to use, that I use for my plotting. And this is what started off as the 30-year plan for the plotting of the Jackals campaign. And at this point, we're sort of 9 years into it with the supplement Fall of the Children of Bronze. So this is all of the storylines, all of the behind the scenes that are all kind of building towards something, at least in my personal game. We'll see how much of this gets released by has a place in the published adventures and material. So I'll be walking through plotting out a mega dungeon in Calypso, which is my world. I'm going to just talk about how I design dungeons, how I design adventures, how I do writing. There's a lot of rewriting. There's a lot of throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. I may try and engage chat into saying, hey, if we were going to plot out a new adventure, what would this look like? I've also got a Darrow themed adventure that I am starting to plot and devise for 13th Age that I may just start doing on stream as well. Again, getting input from the chat and kind of seeing if it's an idea that we think is, kind of worthy enough to continue developing and maybe even try and release through the Iconic production channel. Also going to talk a lot about the shows that we've got currently going on. Have guests to come on and interview and just chat with. I'm hoping to get Corey, who's a good friend of mine, on one of these. He's working on a game for us right now that I'm very excited about. I'm not going to talk much more about that aside from a little bit of a tease. And yeah, we're going to be doing this twice a week, just setting up and talking about games, gaming, life. May even try and get my good friend Bob to get on here. He does art for us, and I think it would be a lot of fun to just sit and talk with him. He's done a lot of art for games for me over the years, and he has this uncanny ability to take basically my incoherent drivel of trying to take things out of my head and get them into art direction and turns them into just beautiful pieces of art. So that's a kind of an outline why we're calling it Behind the Screen, kind of why I'm doing this and kind of what you can expect from this. Yeah, so any other questions? Again, these are going to just be short 10 to 30-minute episodes, little digestible thing in the morning as I kind of step away from writing. I try and write first thing every morning for about 2 hours after I drop my son off at school and then jump into the rest of my day. So yeah, any Rook, JD, any thoughts or questions? We had one. I also want to get, well, I toss it out there. I also want to get a friend of the show on here by the name of Restar. Good guy named Ben. He played in our B Team game on the Ulysses International channel and was also in our holiday episode where we did The Stupidest Drone. And Ben loves Torg. And so if you follow the Iconic Production channel, you know that we run games on the Ulysses International channel for them. I ran a very long Torg campaign with several sub-campaigns going on. And Ben loves old Torg as well as new Torg. And old Torg was a beast of a game. They put out so many books, and while I've never played Old Torg, I thought it'd be cool to get a kind of a retrospective with Ben. Just bring him on, chat for about 10-15 minutes, why he loves Torg, why people should be playing more Torg, and what Old Torg was like, and kind of what the difference between the two was. So when did I first start writing RPGs? So I've been writing RPGs now for almost a decade. It was, again, going back to my friend Ben. I met Ben. Well, my first attempt at writing a game supplement was for 4th edition. My friend Bob, and his wife, and my wife, and a good friend of ours who's now a published author, JT Evans. Go check out his books on Amazon. We put together this, and a couple of others. I want to say there might have been Chris might have been involved in that. We put together a small setting guide and a adventure for 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons, which is actually still available on DriveThruRPG, which is just so bizarre to me that it's still out there and exists. And then we never got to the second adventure. It all kind of fell apart. And so I had started doing the 13th Age podcast, and that put me in contact with Tim Brown. And we were kind of talking about maybe me doing some writing for his world guide for Dragon Kings. And I just met my friend Ben. We were talking about games and how much we love Numenera. And Ben was involved with a company called Reroll Production that did a game called Jadepunk for Fate. And Ben was writing the adventures, and Reroll wanted to do this Fate game called Shadowcraft, which was a fantasy Cold War spy game. And I think I have a copy of it. Yeah. So we took kind of the initial pitch, and let me see if I can get a good. We took this initial pitch, and Ben's name is on the book because Ben and I both worked on the setting. Ben did the art direction, and the idea behind it, it's a Fate game. And Ryan of Reroll, it was big in the Fate community. Like, did a couple of great mechanical things that a lot of people loved. And so this game is set in Arcadia, and you play the descendants of the children that fairies steal when they put changelings back in place. And so they bring the humans back to Arcadia, and over centuries, millennia, the magic of fairy has kind of imprinted on these humans, changing them into something else. And so it's a Cold War spy game set in the lands of fairy, where you have really powerful magics, and you are involved in this kind of Cold War between the Seelie and the Unseelie court. And we put out a little second supplement. Ben and I tried to introduce random roll tables to Fate. We did a mission generator supplement. You can get both of these on DriveThruRPG as well. Jackals is available on Osprey's website. You can get it through Amazon, both physically and on Kindle. You can get it on DriveThruRPG as well. And so that kind of opened the door for me. Once I got that published, I was working on stuff with Tim. Tim brought me into Trish and I in to kind of help Ulysses when they were doing conventions, and I got some more FaceTime. And then actually, because of that, I met the guys at Osprey, and that kind of is what put me down the road to doing Jackals. The 13th Age podcast is kind of how I got involved with 13th Age. Rob and Jonathan and Wade and Kat, they're just great people. We love supporting 13th Age, and we love supporting Pelgrane in any way that we can. And I was helping, I think I helped Rob do some reference work for 13th Age Glorantha, just kind of making sure that all the monster stat blocks were pointed to the right place and that kind of thing. And then helped out a little bit with shards, and that kind of what got me the developer role at 13th Age. All right, so last question, and then we'll bring this this first episode of Behind the Screen to a close. Tell me about your love of lost cultures and how that has influenced your stories and your games. All right, well, this one will be far longer than a single cup of coffee, but I have always had a love of the myths and legends of our own world. And when I went and got a degree, a master's degree in theology, I focused in on ancient languages and sort of comparative mythology, looking at how Canaanite myths and Babylonian myths and Egyptian stories, all of these things kind of were in reaction to or reacted to by the writers of the Old Testament. And so that really is kind of what started me down this path. About a decade ago, I was wrapping up another huge Tanar campaign, which was the main world I had gamed in for probably 10 or 15 years, and was looking at something new. And Tanar was really based on the idea that if it existed in Gygaxian fantasy, it had a place in Tanar. So everything, whether it made sense or not, I would try and reconcile it. And thanks to discussions with Ben and another good friend of mine, Richard, who you'll meet on the Grand Campaign, which we are launching this Saturday. It'll be the fourth Saturday of every month, and I'll talk a little bit about that at the end of this episode. We did, there's something about bounded creativity that allows you to be even more creative, I feel like, than just saying, here's everything, let me just throw it all in. And so I started really digging into the myths of the ancient Near East. I was reading a lot of R. Scott Baker, who I cannot recommend necessarily because those books are violent and graphic and dark, but have a deep and abiding sense of history and time that is almost Tolkien-esque, and is kind of set in the first trilogy is set in a fantasy version of the First Crusades. And so all of that kind of came together, and I decided I wanted to make my own world more along the guidelines of what kind of Tolkien did, where he took the things that he believed and baked them deeply into the setting. And so that is how I arrived at what would become Calypso. So if I can find some of the old notes I have on Scapple, the world looks wildly different 10 years later than kind of what I was first imagining for it. And I started off a small game. I had wrapped up a very long Numenera campaign. I wrapped up I started a small game of Adventure Conquer King using Calypso as my default world. And I would say about 5 or 6 sessions into it, I was like, the D20 just isn't working for me. And Phil, a friend of mine at Osprey, was like, well, why don't you try making your own system for it? Kind of let's see where that goes. And that is where Jackals came from. That is kind of where Iconic grew out from. And that's kind of where we're at now. So again, that's all this is going to be. 10 to 20 minutes of me rambling, answering questions, talking about books, games, development, the other shows, going from there. So just as a heads up, we're going to be doing a lot on the Iconic channel this year. We're trying to really reward our patrons and subscribers and viewers by adding more content. So Behind the Screens is going to be twice a week here at 10 o'clock Central, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Third Saturday of every month, we do Exploring Glorantha. We just did our first live Twitch stream of that, where Evan and I just talk about this Bronze Age mythological world that we both just love and adore. Fourth Saturday of every month, we're going to be talking the Grand Campaign. Now, let me tell you a little bit about that, give you a heads up. The Grand Campaign is going to be an hour-long stream where myself, Josh, who ran the Gebrakan campaign on our channel, and my good friend Richard are just going to be sitting around talking about why multi-year campaigns with multiple stories and groups and characters are our preferred way to run RPGs. Not saying that if you don't like that there's anything wrong with that. You play at your table the way you want to, but I have found the most rewarding and enjoyable and memorable experiences in gaming to be things that pay off only in, 80, 90, 100 sessions into a game. And so we're going to be talking about everything about why you would want to run a grand campaign, how you run a grand campaign, pitfalls to enjoy. We're trying to push against kind of this idea that gaming has become consumable and disposable. The idea that, hey, most game sessions or RPG sessions or campaigns only last about 6 to 8 sessions, and we're really trying to push back against that. There is a joy that is, and a richness that is discovered multiple sessions in. And by multiple sessions, I mean multiple years. We're also going to be transitioning at the end of Season 5 into Season 6 when we transition kind of away from 13th Age and into Gumshoe. We're going to do an entire season of the Iconic podcast on Gumshoe, which is another great game by Pelgrane Press. We're going to do those as live episodes on Twitch as well, and then edit them down and put them out into the world on the Iconic podcast. Just try something new, try and put more content on the channel, more content on YouTube and on our podcast. Also, we're planning on we're still working it out, we're going to be doing some guest starring on other channels, doing some guest playing as characters, playing maybe GMing on other channels. We'll keep you updated on all of that. But if you like this, if this was interesting to you, please consider following the channel. Thanks to Rook, who gifted a ton of people with subscriptions to our channel today. Rook, thank you, sir. You are just a wonderful person, and I'm so glad to be able to get to hang out with you on these streams. Also, you can expect to see Rook on, we're going to be doing some actual plays this year of Gumshoe, and we're going to try and make sure we get Rook roped into those. If you are watching this on YouTube, please consider subscribing, liking the video, subscribing on YouTube, turning on notifications. That way the algorithm goes, hey, people like this stuff, we should put it in front of more people. And if you really like what we're doing, please consider Oz. Ozver is another great friend of the show and a good friend of mine personally, hugely influential in the design of Jackals. He did a lot of the stat analysis for me. I love that guy. Oz, as Oz said, smash the like button. I think that is how I'm supposed to say that. Consider joining us on Patreon. We do polls, we do monthly videos. We are in the process of taking some of our random encounters that we've done on the 13th Age Iconic podcast and putting them into a usable format for our patrons. And then we have a Discord channel that you get invited to if you are a patron. So I think that's it. Was shooting for about 20 to 30 minutes, and we're about halfway through there, so that works for me. So until next time, I'll see you Thursday. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. Oz, JD, Rook, always good to see you. And I will talk with you all on Thursday when we review Torchbearer 2. Have a good one.